Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So today we're going to distress the little paint can I got in my most recent haul from eBay, and we're going to make brushes. So first of all, I want to make the paint can look as though there's actual paint in it. So in order not to actually use up my paint, I'm going to fill the paint can partially with Gorilla Wood glue. And I did it drop by drop because I didn't want to overfill it. After I filled it, I put a little paint on the outside to give it the illusion of drips. And after I did that, I touched it up and then allowed it to dry. So see? So let's give that a moment and come back. So while that was drying, I went on to do a rough cut and make my brushes. Now, dolls, you've seen me make brushes in other videos in my playlist. Definitely check that out, the cleaning brushes. But in this instance, I'm going to make a faux paint brush straight out of wood, no bristles. So what I did was I just took a couple of long stir sticks, the kind that are made out of birch wood. If you didn't see my video regarding supplies for furniture making, check that out. But they're the really long stir sticks. I glued two pieces together, and when they dried, I was able to carve them and shape them into the shape of the paintbrush. I shaped the handle and then beveled the low part to give the impression of bristles, and then sanded. Now back to our paint. So the Gorilla Wood glue is dried down in the paint, and it kind of sunk into like a little hole, so I'm going to have to fill that. But no worries, I'm going to paint the surface of the wood glue, and then I'm going to fill in that little recessed hole which is in the inside. But first, let's paint the drips on the outside. And I took a very fine detail brush and I painted the tops of those areas where I dripped the wood glue, to give it a little dimensional effect, because I felt if I just painted it with straight flat paint, it would not have had the freshly dripped look. So yeah, that's what I did. And then later on, I'm going to add dimensional glaze to it to make it look like it's still wet instead of matte. So I slowly added more paint inside because the glue recessed and left a hole. So I had to fill that hole with glue. But projects like that, you just take your time. But that looked good. So now we're back to our brushes. So now that the brushes are dried, I painted the bristles black. Now I did feel like I needed to add a hole to the brush because most paint brushes have a little hole. But I realized that the drill bit that I had in my pen drill was too large, so I had to go for a smaller pin. So I removed it and added it. This is a very simple change, so I just left it there so you can see how simple that was. And I centered it, and slowly, even though this is sped up, I slowly drilled through to get a nice neat hole in the handle of my paintbrush, so that if I wanted to add a thread or hang it on a hook, that I would be able to. Now for a little added realism, I had a piece of aluminum looking tape, and I cut it to the size that I wanted it to. And although it had adhesive on it, I still added glue because over time the adhesive may give way. I wanted the bond to be permanent. Now you could have used aluminum foil or even a small piece of metal, but the aluminum tape was available for me, so I just used that. Now there's so many different ways to make a paintbrush. This is just my way. I just more or less wanted it to be a prop along with my paint cans. I didn't actually want to do actual bristles in this case. And I gently used my tweezers to wrap the aluminum tape around the base of my faux bristles and held it for a couple seconds until the glue took, and pinched it a little bit with my tweezers. And just take your time with projects like this. Things like this are very tedious, and it was extra tedious for me because my nails are quite long this weekend. And you're going to have to kind of pinch it a moment just to make sure that the glue takes, because it's trying to catch on top of the adhesive. And after it's done, there you go. So give that opportunity to dry, and then I began to work on the other brush. And when I was done, it was time to set them up in the setting. This is what I call the fun part. So I got them together, and I wanted to actually do two different things. So I wanted the green, one of the brushes to be with the big can of green paint. And that's the one I kept a little bit blunt at the end. I didn't paint it all the way through so I would be able to know the difference. And the other one I angled it, and I was going to use that to make a small pot of stain. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So I dipped the blunt brush into the green paint and just left a glob on the end and set it to the side, so it would look like they were still dipping the paint and had been working, and set it aside for a moment. And then I decided I would go ahead and do the other little small can of paint. I wanted to make this can to look like a small can of wood stain, so it looked like they had been staining woodwork. So what I did with this one was I actually just used my real brown paint and took a little bit of the a small brush and make little splash marks on the outside of that paint can to make it look as though it had been opened and closed a couple times and used. I allowed that to dry. And then I got my craft glaze. Now this is by Aleene's, but it has the same type of effect as if you had some Dimensional Magic that's by Mod Podge. It does the same thing. It gives things a shiny, kind of almost still wet or glass-like effect. So I just put a little bit on top of my paints so that it would look as though the paint and the drips were still wet. So dolls, this was just my way of making those lovely little paint cans look a little bit more interesting, to bring them to life, to make them look as though someone was staining some things and painting some things in the rooming house, dollhouse, and they just set everything down to come back a little bit later. I sure have enjoyed making this video for you dolls today. Now, if you've enjoyed watching, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, like, share, and subscribe, and always look for me on Mondays and Wednesdays Eastern Standard Time after 7:30. Now, this is just a quick view of the rooming house dollhouse dining room and that beautiful table. They better be careful not to get any paint on that table. We just made that as a kit in another video. If you haven't seen that, definitely check out my furniture playlist. As usual, I've enjoyed you dolls so much today. I'm looking forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Take care now, dolls. Bye-bye.